Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Don't Praise the Machine. This is episode number 164. As always, I'm one of your hosts. I go by the name Alexander Holland. I'm sat in a slightly overcast Berlin, Germany, and sat down there underneath me, as he is every single week, in Melbourne, Australia. He's got to be the one called
John Maloney. Hi, everyone.
And John Maloney, why don't we start off with an absolute DPTM classic that we know we use in our daily lives, the DPTMers use in their daily lives. John, what's been one of the highlights of your Friday?
Gee, well, some of you will know that I hijacked my our Instagram account, the DPTM Instagram account, to plug the release of an article that I was writing.
Use the cast as well.
Yeah, and my side hustle. There's a publication in Australia called The Politics, and I'm doing a bit of writing for them. And my first article came out today at 4 p.m. and it's a digital newsletter at this stage, a bit like the one that you receive every single week from us if you're a DPTM.org subscriber. And I mean, part of the interesting background is increasing my understanding of the fact that these days, if you have a good newsletter, if you've got a, bit of get up, a good name, and most importantly, a list of subscribers whose email addresses you have and can monetize and sell, then that's hot property. And that's what happened here. The Politics used to be part of a publication called The Monthly, which is a big sort of politics and culture publication in Australia that comes out in hard copy and digitally. And they had a digital newsletter dealing with kind of the day's events and with politics generally, called The Politics. And then now The Politics has been sold essentially as a newsletter, but it's a freestanding publication now. So there you go. And they're bringing in, like any new publication, they think, we got to bring in the big guns. So
Who's hot? Who's hot right now?
Yeah, who's hot? It's me. I think they've got
Salt Bay,
Billie Eilish, Salt Bay, Salt Bay. Yeah, that's right. It's Charlie from Charlie Bit My Finger. And
fuck, I'm going to subscribe right now for this newsletter.
Yeah, do. So that's been a nice highlight of my day. And now let me reciprocate, because one of the cardinal sins is just answering a question and then sitting silent.
So I don't want to hear what you have to say. I just want to talk about myself.
Just don't want to. I don't want to open myself up to the vulnerability of asking anything of you. So what's been happening on your neck of the wood?
On your neck of the woods. Well, today's the first podcast that I've chosen to wear cap. I woke up this morning and I went out to buy some croissants, and it's a little bit sunny, so I put my hat on. Can you see my logo?
Coopers, wow, that's impressive.
Anyone?
South Australian icon.
And as a lover of alcohol-free beer, I, of course, did my weekly check to see if Coopers have launched an alcohol-free beer. Coopers, everybody who's not from Australia, or I think a lot of people in the UK who've never been to Australia would also know that Coopers is a famous Australian beer, and it's from Adelaide, like we are, because you can get it all over London these days, and they do not sell. Okay, so they do sell an alcohol-free beer, but they don't promote it, and it's the same alcohol-free beer that they've been selling since before alcohol-free beer became hip and trendy. It's called Birell. It's called Cooper's Birell. It has the dustiest old crappy design. I mean, as I'm telling you this, you've never heard of it. This is they are missing a trick, particularly with us. Don't Praise the Machine. They should launch the product knowing what they should be sitting around board meetings at Cooper's, and they should be saying, look, we don't really want to launch an alcohol-free beer, But these guys on this hot podcast keep talking about it. We should just do it because I think these guys are going to be the go-to guys. We'd have it on the desk. I would much rather have Cooper's alcohol-free beer as product placement on the desk rather than Liquid Death or G Fuel or Prime Energy, some other bullshit drink that I don't want to promote. I want to promote Cooper's alcohol-free beer that doesn't exist yet. Cooper's, get in touch. We're going to launch something, a new fresh alcohol-free Cooper's flavor that's not dusty old Birell.
That's not like yeast
bottom of the
water
shelf
from the 90s. Yeah, used to be.
We could call it.
You know, the old crop of alcohol-free beers. They just tasted crap, and they didn't have any coolness to them at all. It was basically like, I'm on antibiotics, so I'll have a Birell.
Yeah, that's right. I'm pregnant, or I've been pushing my old lady around too much. Better buy a few Birell. Start to tone it down a little.
Right. Yeah.
Now, something else I'm going to say is I got a name for this alcohol-free beer. I don't know if Coopers want this because they're a bit more highbrow, but launch my own alcohol-free beer. I'm just going to call it Torrens Water.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Nice. Top of the Torrens.
Torrens, for our international listeners, is the river that flows through Adelaide. And like all rivers in major cities, it was once beautiful and fresh and possible to drink from. And people used to swim in it. And that all stopped about 100 years ago. And now, like all major bodies of water flowing through capital cities, it's an absolute cesspit that you wouldn't go near with a 10-foot clown pole.
It's full of dead bodies and dirty, shameful secrets.
My alcohol-free beer is going to be called "Secrets from the Bottom of the Torrens." It's a long name for an alcohol-free beer. What's the bottom of a river called? So the bank is the side. Base Torrens Basin water.
Bottom of the river name. Streambed, I guess.
Riverbed.
Yeah, riverbed.
Riverbed. Torrens Riverbed.
Yeah.
Everybody, if
just a picture of a introduced European carp on the label.
That's right.
I've got a big problem with carp.
So if you've fractured your relationship with your wife and your kids because you're just hammering booze all the time, you need Uncle Al Holland's Torrens Riverbed Secrets Water.
Secrets of the riverbed.
Secrets of the Torrens. What's that acronym? SOTB. Torrens. No, RB. Secrets of the
Torrens Riverbed.
RB. Soderb. Oh, let's have a couple of Soderbs.
Yeah, sure. Well, it surprises me they haven't gotten on that bandwagon.
Me too.
They're fusty dusties at Cooper's.
I'm going to give them you know what? I'm going to write this down. I'm literally going to ask. It's probably some trade secret that they won't tell me, but I'll ask why. And I will say, we have a podcast.
Yeah.
We can promote this. So we'll want that Cooper's. I've written that to them. I'll write to one of the Cooper's kids directly after the podcast. Now, you know,
are there any Coopers still in the?
Oh yeah, it's all actual
actual Coopers.
It's the actual Coopers. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, Adelaide's not old enough to have had any of these generations disappear. Everybody's just still minted.
No.
I would actually. This would be a good deep dive. Actually, I would love to meet the kids of the Weymouths, of the Pirries, of the Hindleys. These were all real men for anybody who, this is an extremely Adelaide intro to the show. I apologise to anybody out there who's not from Adelaide. But all the major streets in Adelaide are named after powerful men who helped set up the city when we were founded in 1836. So where are the Weymouths? Where are the Hindleys? Where are the Rundles?
Where are the Perrys?
Where are the West Terraces, the North Terraces, Terry North Terrace? Where are the children of Terry North Terrace? I got a fun thing, John. We love talking about supermarkets for some reason, or maybe it's just me. Have all the supermarket ones been me? Probably. I have an unhealthy obsession with supermarkets.
Look, I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah.
This one's good. Supermarket shopping in Germany is notoriously unpleasant.
Yeah.
You have the luxury in Australia that I always forget until I come home, where the person at the checkout bags your groceries for you. This always blows my mind because that's how I grew up. For 28 years, I was used to not bagging my own groceries. And then I moved to Europe, and then you'd go to Lidl or Aldi in Germany, and they, instead of having a nice, relaxed conversation, a little chit-chat with the checkout person, and as they gently bagged your groceries, they would basically fling your groceries over the barcode scanner, and they would just shoot down and start collecting at great speed in a pile at the end of the checkout. And you would realize very quickly that you were expected to bag all those groceries yourself. And also that you had very limited time to do this in. And if you weren't
going to start doing that with somebody else's groceries in a second.
Yeah, exactly. And there's there's a big line behind you. And that's just one. I could go on and on about why German supermarkets are shit compared to Australian supermarkets. But we haven't had self-checkouts in Germany in my whole time of being here, even though they had them in London when I lived there 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was never an option to avoid this experience. And also the other thing about German supermarkets is that you often have to wait in a huge line because there's not enough checkout people and there's no self-checkouts, and they'll have 1 or 2 checkouts open. And so you just end up like 10 people deep waiting 10 minutes to be able to get out with your groceries. Now, just in the last couple of months, one supermarket at the end of a couple of blocks from me, Riva City, brought in 3 self-checkout counters. And it has changed my life. And I'm telling you right now, Riva, I used to go to this Riva once every fucking like 2 months because it's a bit smaller. It's one of these little city locations. I am going there for every single shop now because I never have to wait in a line for the checkout. So it's just a perfect example of them making a small change and they are getting all of my business. All of my John, my bank account is empty. It's dry right now. I'm in a lot of trouble and it's all with Riva.
Yeah, sure.
And it's just an example of like, I think about.
Are you congratulating them or are you aggrieved?
No, I'm
congratulating. You feel like
it's a combination.
You feel that they've ripped you off.
No, it's like it's like they've basically taken some of the psychological tricks of a casino and they've somehow managed to get me to spend way more money than I need to. And so now I'm just wearing a barrel up and down the street. No, I think about things when the technology comes in and disrupts an industry. I often think about what the human cost of that is. So, you know, I think a lot about the way that Uber interrupted the taxi, and we've spoken about this as well before, how Uber interrupted the taxi industry. And there's negative things to Uber for sure, but there's also a lot of problems that it solved because, and similarly, like there's shitty things about Spotify. But before Spotify, when the music industry was able to sell us music only through compact discs, it was a fucking racket. I mean, it's a racket now because the music industry is like major shareholders in Spotify. But for 10 euros a month now, 11 euros a month, you can listen to every song that you want and you don't have to listen to shitty songs that you don't want. But back in the day, before Napster and MP3s and the internet disrupted music, it was a fucking racket. You had to pay $30 or $40 for a CD.
Yeah.
The margins on
Yeah.
which would have just been insane because, I mean, do you remember when blank CDs became available? How much did they cost? Fucking, it is a piece of plastic. And
yeah.
so the margins on albums would have just been insane on CDs. And
Yeah.
so then then it was ripe for disruption because you had, you wanted one or two songs. Sometimes you wanted one song that was on an album and you would pay $30 for a CD. And bands would make shitty albums with one song on it and just filler.
Yeah, that's right. And also you'd be beholden to the tastes and also the commercial incentives of radio stations. Like obviously there were options. People listened to community radio, they listened to university radio stations or whatever, all because, the main ones were just like, well, we're being paid by whoever, Universal, to just play the shit out of these ones. And if you're some up and coming artist, good luck to you. But you've got to break into this kind of echelon to even be played. And if you're not, like, how are people going to know? How are people going to take a chance with your music? They're not going to go out and go, oh, I've never heard of this person before. I'll pay $35 for their album.
Yeah.
But, the channels to get known were so much narrower. And it's true, yeah, there's downsides. But somebody, shout out to Harley, he's a long-time listener, long-time caller. He and I were talking the other day about how the music industry, every time there's kind of any development, their first move is, this is unfair, we're going to sue the shit out of everyone.
Yeah.
And they just basically use the intervening time to get a foot in that new door and start to dominate it. And then they're like, all right, fine, we're okay with this now.
Yeah, it's a mafia. The music industry is like insanely corrupt, and it's just, I think it has a history of having, they had payola back in the day where, they would just be sliding the radio stations money and saying, oh, it's a nice little station you got here. It'd be a real shame if something happened to it, kind of thing. Better play my crappy artist's crappy song all the time until people go out and buy. I heard speaking of disruption and technology, I listen to a podcast at the moment, which is about this era that I didn't even realize now had a title, or maybe it even had a genre title at the time. But it's what is now referred to as indie sleaze, John, and it's basically the early 2000s indie band explosion that was essentially driven by the explosion of the Strokes that then led on to just like thousands of bands, and you can basically draw some quite definitive lines between Britpop ending, which was Blur, Oasis. That whole thing had run its course in the late 90s. New millennium comes around. People are looking for the next new thing. The youth of the 2000s, which we kind of fit into because I remember that first Strokes album. The youth of the new millennium are looking for their movement. The Strokes come along, and the music industry, the music press get behind the Strokes. The Strokes become huge. And then you get like the Killers, you get Jet, you get, Vine, they're all the Vines. You get like Block Party, you get tons of these bands. Arcade Fire. And one of the music journalists that I was listening to on this podcast who was talking about that was saying that before the internet, if you were a band and you wanted to become huge, you essentially had to be given the thumbs up by a publication like NME. Yeah. And he was saying if you were going to be huge, the way that it would happen is you'd get signed to a major label, or maybe before a major label, NME would have to give you, the New Music Express magazine would have to run articles on you. So these were the gatekeepers. And then he said that he went to Reading for he was the editor of NME at the time. He went to Reading Festival in the early 2000s, and he had been hearing whispers about this band called the Arctic Monkeys. And he thought to himself, I've never heard their music. I know that they're not signed to a label yet. We've not done a story on them. So he was basically assuming I can guess what kind of following they're going to have based on if they have no airplay, they have no album. So he goes to the tent where they're playing at Reading, and he's thinking to himself, there's going to be like just their mums and dads and their friends in the front, giving him a little cheer. And he
Yeah.
said the tent was packed and
Mm.
everybody knew every word to every song. And
Yeah, okay.
it was because of MySpace, because of the internet.
Oh,
And he
how
knew
interesting. Yeah.
that everything was about to change.
Because they hadn't gone through those traditional routes, but they just broken through.
Because they hadn't gone through those traditional routes. They had just broken
Yeah.
through. And the end of all that is that I get to just walk out of Raver without having to speak to a person at the checkout. And I'm so happy for that. And Arctic Monkeys and MySpace, I want to thank you for Raver's self-checkouts.
Yeah, sure. Interesting pivot. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Ravers self-checkouts. Really,
Indie Sleaze,
You walked in.
The Strokes,
Yeah,
Britpop.
you walked in and said, I know what kind of checkout experience I'm going to have. Then you were like, no, I was wrong. This is the new era. It's all going to change. We did a two-parter, didn't we, a while ago about the attempted evolution from, self-checkouts to no checkouts. And it sounds like Germany hasn't even gotten to embrace the first leg of that journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is strange.
It is, like I say, it's just one of those things where I often think that removing humans and putting machines in is a net negative. I think you have that kind of emotional reaction as the robots take things over. But this is just one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, fuck this, man. Like, this is absolutely a net positive. And it's because they basically had a culture of shitty checkout experiences. Unfortunately, the people that are going to suffer are the checkout people. It's not like the supermarkets themselves, who are the ones that created the shitty checkout experience in the first place, are the ones that have to suffer the loss, because of course they're the ones that are actually saving money by solving the problem that they themselves created in the first place, which was shitty checkout experiences.
That's true. Although I think if those checkout staff, maybe you could make them self-employed the way that waiters used to be. It's like, well, you could just go to the self-checkout, but what about me? I'm over here. I've got a little bit of razzle dazzle. I've got really good chat. I bag your groceries for you.
Yeah.
Or it's going to cost you $5 extra, but it's worth it.
I was thinking as I looked over at the checkout people and started to think that their days might be numbered and how can they still contribute, I started thinking, what if we took them all and we put them in a big mincer, and then we just minced them down, and then we took that mince and we sold the mince at Raver. We blended them in with pork and veal, and then they're contributing because they are 30% of the mince mix that I'm buying for my barbecue on a Sunday.
That's a beautiful legacy.
Now, John, what's been happening in your neck
Just
of the
throw
woods?
to me when you make a fucking joke about grinding up working class people. Now it's my turn to talk. Well, I haven't had any profound shopping experiences recently, so I'm going to talk about something different. But it's another kind of changing of the guard, end of an era story. So in that sense, maybe it's a natural follow-on. And that is the news, which has come in the last couple of days, that on June 26th of this year, ICQ, the juggernaut instant messaging service, which many of you, and I'm sure you will know, and will have used almost instinctively at one point in your life, is ending forever. And I think for most people, including me, the initial reaction to that news might be, I can't believe it was still around.
Maybe for
2001.
Maybe for our parents, John, you could just explain what ICQ is soon to be was.
Sure. So Peter and Celia, Stephen and Marie, if you're listening, they are our four listeners. Yeah, that's right. Just commiserating with each other about their deadbeat sons. And so ICQ, set up in 1996 by, I think, 5 programmers from Israel.
Oh, wow.
And it was apparently mostly something that spread by word of mouth rather than being promoted or marketed by traditional channels. But, the internet was in its very early days then, and people were particularly young people were kind of getting on board with it, and they wanted a way to sort of talk to each other using multiple platforms, using, they could log in from a different computer in an internet cafe, they could log in at home, and they could log on to ICQ, and they'd have a particular username attached to, I think, a particular kind of assigned number that was unique to them. And so it was a kind of early version, not the first, but among the first, and certainly among the first to go really, really big, maybe even one of the very first to do that, of these kind of instant messaging services, which we still use today. We use Messenger or we use WhatsApp or whatever, and not that different really in a fundamental way. And it had a particular kind of look and feel to it, using sort of little chat windows and kind of colorful graphics and so on. And so it got big pretty quick. So it started, I think, in 96, and then in 98, AOL bought it for a whopping sum. It was $287 million up front, and then a further $120 million ongoing, I think. So it cost them, what's that, close to, like $500-ish million. And that was a lot of money back then to be spending on internet products.
Yeah.
It's probably kind of seen as a bit of a gamble, really, because these days, you sell Activision or you sell, at some aspect of Meta off for $1 squillion and nobody bats an eyelid, but that was a big deal. And it speaks to how big it was. And it got bigger from there. In 2001, I think it peaked. It had over 100 million accounts registered to it, which again, like in 2001, internet use numbers was pretty substantial because a lot of people were still saying, older people especially, were saying, what is this internet you keep talking about? Am I still going to get milk delivered and papers delivered to my door? That sort of stuff. And can I still use my Polaroid camera? And then so 2001, it gets really big. 2002, I don't really know. I haven't looked into what they got patented, but they had it patented. So there must have been an inventive step involved in the kind of underlying tech where they, everyone had a unique user name and was able to kind of do this one-to-one communication. And that I think speaks to how much of a forerunner it was, because these days, it's like being able to patent a toaster or something. It's just like these messaging services are everywhere. Anyway, then it kind of gradually petered out over the 2000s because there were other messaging services that it was competing against that started to become more common. And obviously, Facebook was using Messenger at that point. I'm sure things like MySpace had services that people were just using internally. So these kind of standalone messaging services that weren't associated with social media were probably on the way out. But it became more of a jurisdiction-specific thing. So apparently it was big in Russia until much more recently. And so it was sold again in 2010 for, I think, less than it was bought by AOL for, significantly less. But it sort of lumbered on. And in fact, in 2014, they managed to arrest its decline and get its numbers to start going upwards again, number of users. And then, I don't know, intervening years, I guess it's kind of been just like doing its thing quietly, but eventually they saw the writing on the wall and announced just recently, June 26, that's it. If you're still using ICQ, probably there's some weird and untoward reason for that, and we don't want you doing it anymore, so get off. And it's one of those kind of moments that, like this huge bit of, normally bits of internet history, particularly like the bits that were alive in the late 90s, most of them are gone or at least transformed beyond recognition. And, there's been a bit of attention paid to those that are gone, but maybe had made a mark, like aspects of The Sims and so on. And this is a bit like that, but it's, it's lasted for nigh on 30 years. And that's a pretty big innings in internet terms. So I think now's the time to rally DPTMers to the cause. If you don't have an ICQ account, if you haven't logged into ICQ since 2001, get back on there.
John,
we can save it. There's still time.
Did you use ICQ?
Pretty sure I did. Yeah, I was trying to think of this, and I could certainly remember because I looked up, like old ICQ interface. I looked up the kind of
we talked about ICQ. I think it's ICQ. We certainly talked about a messaging service in the very first podcast episode of Don't Praise the Machine, I think.
Yeah. I think that might have been mIRC chat.
I think is mIRC not I thought that was some sort of offshoot of ICQ.
Oh, maybe it is. mIRC is an internet relay chat client for Windows. Yeah, so it's a different thing, I guess. But very, very similar. And I would have been using in that same era, the early noughties. I'm sure I would have been using ICQ. But what I remember is not so much the platform as the friends I made along the way and the people that I trolled and misled into thinking I was a beautiful woman, that kind of stuff.
MSN Messenger and AOL were the ones that I used the most. Like mIRC was a bit too early for me. We were quite late to getting the internet because my parents didn't love me as much as other kids' parents loved them, and they would get them the internet and computers very young.
Still don't.
And my parents still won't buy me a computer. All of this technology that I'm doing the podcast with right now, I've had to pay for with my own money, despite my pleas for mum and dad
that's rough.
To deposit.
Have a heart.
Have a heart, Stephen. Have a heart, Stephen and Marie. I used AOL and I used MSN Messenger. And I think they were the two. AOL Messenger was huge with the drum and bass community because you could send MP3 files. And so what would happen in the drum and bass world, shout out to DJ Patch Jules, who I believe is a listener to the podcast, who was kind enough to share a lot of my early drum and bass tracks. Julian had quite a healthy list of AOL contacts because he was a well-known Adelaide drum and bass DJ. And when big name drum and bass DJs would come through Adelaide, Jules would connect with them on AOL and get their handle, and it was all very secret because these people had quite a big profile, and so they didn't just want anyone. So it was this kind of status thing where you like you would want Elon Musk's phone number or some shit, like
And so of course, because it was like a personal link to that person.
And you could you could converse with them and send them things. And so I think this is right. Maybe Jules can correct me here. Maybe I owe him a few slabs, actually. I think my first ever drum and bass release, which is a track called Everybody, if you want to look this up, we haven't spoken a lot about my drum and bass career, but as soon as John started talking about instant messaging, I thought, let me just wrestle this whole thing off of him and start talking about my drum and bass career.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure that Jules sent my track called When You're Not Around to a drum and bass DJ called Nookie, who all the old London ravers will know. He's still around, Nookie. He's still DJing. He was on...
Oh, wow.
I think he was on Bookham's label, Good Looking Records. And I think Jules sent it to him or Jules sent it to somebody, and it got into the hands of Nookie around 2006, 2007. And then that track got signed and came out on vinyl. So, look, guys, you know that the podcast, Don't Praise the Machine, is about to blow up. And what's going to happen when it blows up? All of my old records, which are currently selling for €2 and €3, are going to be €2,000 or €3,000. So get in on the ground floor. Jump on Discogs, look up Alexander Holland Wellbeing, pick yourself up a copy of 2007's When You're Not Around that came out on the very shortly lived Zen recordings and think to yourself, that was all because of the messenger chat that John has said has now shut down. It was
a bit of history.
It's a deep bit of history.
Yeah, what happened to AOL? I mean, is that still a thing? AOL Messenger.
Have a look.
Maybe let's find out.
Let's go back to it. I remember my fuck. I wonder if I could log in still. No, I mustn't remember. I remember my AOL handle, because my drum and bass name was Wellbeing. Again, anybody?
Yeah.
Look up Wellbeing drum and bass. That's me. You can find me on Spotify. I think I currently have a couple of hundred listeners a month still. Wellbeing, and my AOL handle was Dr. Wellbeing, DR. Well, because I couldn't get Wellbeing because that was already taken. Yeah. And speaking of...
So, AOL, AIM software, AOL Instant Messenger, was only recently discontinued when AOL was acquired by Verizon, and they discontinued it as a service on the 15th of December 2017. So pretty recent, really. And yeah, I probably have more memories of using other services rather than ICQ, I think, but it's all a bit of a blur at the moment, as is most of my memory of anything more than about a week and a half ago. So
I also remember when we were on mIRC chat in old Ben Kervel's house. Shout out to Ben Kervel. Yeah. I remember that we joined I joined like a mIRC drum and bass chat room, and one of the members of Pendulum, El Hornet, was in there. And I remember by that stage they were quite big, and I was like, are you pretending to be El Hornet from, because he was very on drum and bass was an extremely, I mean, I wasn't really involved in other dance musics, but drum and bass was like an extremely online community even back then. It was like tons and tons of online forums, and people were in rooms, and Dogs on Acid was a very famous drum and bass website forum, which I think still exists. And yeah, El Hornet from Pendulum was just in one of the rooms, and I was like, are you pretending to be El Hornet? I think his name's Paul.
Yeah.
And he was like,
I remember that.
And he wrote back and said, who the fuck is going to pretend to be me, man? Like, I'm like, it's such a weird thing. And I was like, no, you're kind of like pretty big now. Yeah. And it was clearly him. It was clearly him. Yeah, he's just like an old internet guy. And yeah, I remember just having a bit of a back and forth with him and saying, oh, I love Pendulum. I love drum and bass. I love Vault. I love Spiral. I love Hold Your Color.
Guys, please get on ICQ and don't let it die. You've only got a few weeks until the 26th of June, and then it's all going to shit. And if we let this go, you might think, oh, well, another one bites the dust. What's the big deal? We've got to stand up for internet heritage, and I draw the line at ICQ.
John, I have to shut my curtain because I've tried once again to light my podcast with natural light, and what's happened is it's hit that time of day. Oh, there we go. It's just gone down. It's gone behind a cloud. I'm just going to shut one of the curtains because I'm getting way too much sun, and it's blowing out all my settings. Why don't you talk?
Problems.
Why don't you talk?
Talk to the audience.
Say nasty things behind my back. Say things like, guys, he didn't really ever put any music out. He's not well. Just let him have this. Please don't look that up.
Please. Yeah, we thought it would be a nice birthday present for him when he was about 22 to message him pretending to be from a record label, and we sent him a vinyl copy of his album. And it was a tough time in a lot of people's lives, and I think it put a smile on his face, and that's the main thing. Oh, he's back.
Man, that's going to be...
I said that.
Sorry, go on.
You'll have to listen back and find out what I said in that little bit there.
That's going to be fucking terrible for continuity if I have to intersplice those two bits, and it goes from this beautifully sunny room that I had
comments
to just
the comments section is going to be absolutely on fire. Why are you even putting a video out if you can't get continuity?
Is it that? What you expect me? You expect me to bloody watch this, but you can't bloody get your shit enough together to light your room correctly for my time.
I loved that. We had some more comments on the Ariane the stock model,
Mhm.
ubiquitous stock model.
The TikTok.
And one of them was, yeah, that's right, on TikTok. And one of them was somebody saying, "Why didn't you tell us her name?" And
I mean,
I think we did in
hundreds
the
of people.
caption.
So it's not in the caption. It's in
Okay.
the video. There's a brief image of a
yeah.
news article that comes in that says the stock model Ariane.
Ariane.
But I mean,
And then it's in the comments like 200 times.
It's in the comments 200 times. Like, oh, it's incredible. And so many people have said, why didn't you bloody tell me? Why didn't you tell me a bloody name? The most, I mean, the comments that just get asked over and over and over again. Number one, I hope she makes money from this. Does she make money? The second one is, she's going to get replaced by AI. And then it's, why didn't you say her name? You should have said her name.
Yeah.
And then lots of people saying that
going,
they've seen her
I
themselves.
think I know her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've seen her. Or there's a few apocryphal tales. Oh, she's actually from Siberia.
That's right.
No, she's not. But yeah, this recent comment, I just thought that's great, isn't it? That people go, "Why didn't you give me this?" And you go, "Well, you don't even know who I am." So, and we offered this reel as a free thing for your entertainment. If you don't like it, fine. But I'm sorry we didn't fulfill your criteria because I've never met you. I don't know what they are.
And all you would, maybe just glance at the comments for 3. Like if you see if you see that a video has 1,000 comments, few of them are probably going to talk about who she is,
who it is. Yeah. Well, that's
internet. First ICQ going down, and then people asking on TikTok, not bothering to look at the comments. This world's gone to the fucking dogs.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I think we need to just take the internet off people for a year.
Yeah.
Have a good hard think about it.
Imagine
what
that.
kind of internet culture do we want? And once we've reflected,
tell you what,
ease it back.
There's a few people I know who I'd love to take away their internet for a year. Fucking loved. I'd be fine. Look at me. Even though I seem very online, I have a podcast and I talk about Gen Z slang and skibbity toilets. I'm fine. I'm having cold showers in the morning and running marathons. I don't give a shit. Take this away from me right now. I'll be way better off for it. But you out there listening to this, you're pathetic. You can't fucking go to bed without your phone. You fucking weak dog. Oh man, I saw
You'll have to email. You'll have to put all your correspondence to Coopers into the old-fashioned letterbox, telling them, "Can you please?" This is the thing that I would like to know, actually, which I might research for a future episode. Is it still possible? Like, if I had some remarks that I wanted to share with Kellogg's about a cereal of theirs that I enjoyed, but I felt would benefit from the addition of dried figs.
Yeah.
Can I write them a letter? Like, is someone going, there's a mail room and someone's reading that?
They'd have to.
Crazy.
They would still have to get. I feel like they would still need to get really official correspondence. I mean, I'm just saying this from a German perspective, where you very much only get official correspondence in what I call hard mail.
Yeah,
which is also the name of my favorite homosexual pornography tape that I have under my bed. Hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
weirdly it's spelled MAIL there as well.
So I think that it might get more attention, John. In fact, if you went to the effort of making a little package, if you really wanted to get noticed, what you should do is you could perhaps create the fig mix with the cereal yourself. And then send it in a little box and with a note and maybe some glitter and sparkles, and then they'll give it much more attention than just an envelope from a deranged weirdo.
Sparkles, maybe like the tip of your finger or some unidentified white powder. That'll really fucking blow their socks off.
They'd think, we'll give this guy the time of day because he's not just your average run-of-the-mill fig freak that we get every single day.
If we if we ignore him, we're in real trouble. He's making threats.
Do you want to? I am gonna write to Coopers. I'm gonna write to Coopers and say because they might write back and say, look, just keep this on the down low, but that's coming real soon. And you seem like the type of man that we're
looking for tasters.
We want this to be for a certain type of man. Tell us what kind of man you are, and I'm going to rub my hands together and go, I've been waiting for somebody to say that to me for so long. Get ready for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm an old drum and bass producer. I'm a ginger. I'm a Leo. I enjoy running. I enjoy spending time with friends. I like going on holidays. I like walking. I like reading.
Nice. Yeah.
I like reading.
Buying legumes.
I like buying legumes. I like saving money. And they're going to go, the woman on the phone, on the Zoom call, is going to say, I have literally just ticked every box on my clipboard as you spoke to me. She said, some of these were pretty obscure. I had legumes.
Yeah, she said, I wish we hadn't fired those consultants now. This is all making sense.
And then she's gonna say, would you be okay if the product is named after the River Torrens? And I'm gonna go, I'm gonna say I'm getting emotional with how incredibly serendipitous and mystical this connection has become. Coopers.
And Coopers, and also lady on the phone.
And also lady on the phone.
And she'll say,
man, maybe I
never met a man so passionate about alcohol-free Coopers.
Maybe she is an heir and I could marry into the Coopers family. Wouldn't that be a fucking wouldn't that be a fucking waste if I, a person who doesn't really drink, married into the Coopers family? Does everybody remember that Kevin Bloody Wilson song that goes called Do You Fuck on First Dates? Kevin Bloody Wilson, for everybody out there. How would you refer to musician Kevin Bloody Wilson, John?
Good question.
He's a comedy musician.
Yeah, he's like a bawdy comedy bard. And actually, it's probably worth a future deep dive because there was an era in Australian music history where you had the likes of Kevin Bloody Wilson, you had this other guy, Rodney Roode.
Yeah.
And you had various others. Actually, this is a Harley story again. He was telling me about some kid he went to school with whose uncle was like a ersatz Kevin Bloody Wilson. His name was, like Dingo Fuckwit or whatever. And it was just like they all had they were all like rude songmeisters who wrote about like rooting in the back of utes. And,
which is that rooting is to have sex in Australian slang. And in the UK, for any of our UK listeners out there, he's basically the equivalent of Roy Chubby Brown, I think is his name. Okay. Was that Roy Chubby Brown? And Roy Chubby Brown, I believe, is from... Roy Chubby Brown is also why in League of Gentlemen the town is called Royston Vasey, because that's like his... it's either his town or his real name or something. And that's why... Okay. But yeah, Kevin Bloody Wilson... He made these rude songs that were also
quite kind of bad taste.
Bad taste, yeah. And John, didn't you live with somebody once in Adelaide who had a boyfriend? She was from the country, and when her boyfriend would turn up, he had a big sticker on the back of his pickup truck / utility truck, and that said, which is a very popular sticker in Australia, at least it was in our day, in the country on utility vehicles. And it said Dilly Gaff. And maybe, John, you just want to tell everybody that's a Kevin Bloody Wilson song.
DILLIGAF.
Yeah.
It's a initialism, which stands for Do I Look Like I Give a Fuck? And he had a song. Do I look
like I give a fuck? Dilly Gaff. Am I being direct enough? Dilly Gaff. And maybe we should sell a few Dilly Gaff where we get sued. Can we sell some DPTM? Just our acronym sticker can be DPTM Dilly Gaff, a collab with Kevin Bloody Wilson. But the reason I mentioned Kevin Bloody Wilson is because Kevin Bloody Wilson, I think it's Kevin Bloody Wilson, had a song called Do You Fuck on First Dates? Which was about what he would say to a woman before he went on a date with her, and the chorus goes, Goes,
Do
do you fuck on first dates? Does your dad own a brewery? Can I feel your tits or will you show them to me? Oh, highbrow stuff.
it's aged well.
Highbrow stuff.
Mm.
Anybody should also check out his biggest song, Kevin Bloody Wilson, was the play on it's
Living Next Door.
that's the
to
one.
Alan.
Living Next Door to Alan. Living Next Door to Alan Bond.
Yeah, that's right. So what's the original song? Living Next Door to Alice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Living Next Door to Alice is a song by Smokey and from the 70s. And there was a famous kind of sort of loved and loathed Australian businessman, like a crooked businessman essentially, who fucked a lot of people over. But was a kind of larrikin, and his name was Alan Bond. And so Kevin Bloody Wilson thought, I'm going to write a version of Living Next Door to Alice about Alan Bond because that's got international mega hit written all over it. Didn't do very well outside of Australia, but it did well within the corners of this continent. And he's now 77 years old. And
Kevin Bloody Wilson?
Kevin Bloody Wilson.
He's
been making music since 1962. Pretty good going, Kev. Well done.
Yeah. Wow. Is he still...
First album was first studio album in 84. Most recent studio album, 2023. He's still at it.
Man, I'm putting that on as soon as this podcast ends. I think he's done an about turn and he's just gone and he's full woke.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. His latest is, do I look like I give a fuck? Well, actually, I very much do.
Yeah. Do I look like I give a fuck? He's got his new acronym song is called DEI, and it's all about why that's very important in your corporation. He's got the latest album is called International Dilly Gaff Day, so he's capitalized on that. There you go. Well, you know what? It's funny because Dilly Gaff is one of the few songs of his that he could still. That's a theme that he could still trot out because that doesn't tread on race or sexuality or gender, which were
sexuality or like being mean to women or doing illegal things in pubs,
punching down. It's just
that's right.
That one didn't really have so much to do with punching down.
No, exactly. Oh, he's got a website. Guys, get yourselves over to www. Oh, it's a cracker website. Actually, this looks like a bit of internet history. Kevin Bloody Wilson, world's funniest Australian. Latest news. It's got photos. It's got a guest book, like all modern websites.
Look, even as hard as we try to be funny, John, I'll cop that. Kevin Bloody Wilson, funniest Australian. I'll cop that.
I'll cop that. Guys, he's doing a UK Ireland tour.
What?
2024. And,
when? I'm getting my plane ticket. I'm getting my plane tickets.
This is all happening. Look at this. 2024. Okay, so he says, after a sellout run in the UK this year, South, I don't know what that means, Kev and the crew are excited to announce they'll be returning with the International Dilly Gaff Day in 2024. This run celebrating 40 years since Kev released his first album. We'll see our favourite Australian head north and also finally get back over to Ireland. So he's going, starting in October and going through to November. Galway, Limerick, Belfast, Dublin, Sheffield, Southport, Kendal, Middlesbrough, Scarborough, Mansfield, Crewe, Burnley, Grimsby, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Blackpool, York, Whitby, Newcastle upon Tyne, Barrow-in-Furness, Dundee, St Helens, Stoke-on-Trent, Cheltenham, Blackburn, North Ulladon, Wrexham, Folkestone and Manchester, finishing on the 21st of November. Man, we got to go see.
And it's all just Australians living abroad that are going to go and see him. That's crazy. I didn't know that he could pull people in that many European cities.
Weird. I mean, can he? Man. That's the question. Maybe it's just in the back of a pub playing to two people who didn't know what they were going to come and see. But the only way to find out is to get
you've just done
to Wrexham.
You've just done we spoke about Wrexham this week because I think it was yesterday or the day before, because you just sent me a WhatsApp message that was all shocked, and you said Ryan Reynolds is in X-Files, because were you just sitting at home watching the X-Files?
Watching X-Files. Yeah.
And then
guys, Kevin Bloody Wilson has been relegated in musical terms, and we need to restore him to the Premier League to which he belongs. So get to his gigs. Keep that in your diaries.
Well, everybody, that's been a wide-ranging Don't Praise the Machine episode that was in all the directions that we want to go. It might have seemed directionless and confused, but not in my world. That's exactly, if I put that podcast on and those were the themes coming at me, particularly the end bit about Kevin Bloody Wilson, I'd get a second iPhone so that I could subscribe on iTunes twice and give those guys, and I could rate and review the podcast twice. Is what I would do.
Yeah, give him 10 stars.
Give him 10 stars. I'm giving you a combined 10 stars. Well, I want to say thanks so much, everybody, for tuning into this week's Don't Praise the Machine, episode number 154. I'm one of your hosts, Alexander Hall. 164. And John Maloney, do you want to say anything to everybody before you put your head down and have a Friday night rest?
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to have an absolute rager. Probably rereading my article that I've written.
Yeah. Plug that again, John. How can people read your article if they want to?
Because it's I think if you were to subscribe to The Politics, you can go to just thepolitics.com.au. You can sign up there. You may not receive my article because it's already been delivered to subscribers, but I'm not sure you might. And if you don't, you'll certainly receive my next article, which I'm sure won't be too far away. So sign up.
And just tell people, give them a little bit of what is the article about.
It's about the jolly issue of indefinite detention of migrants in Australia. Guys, I don't always like to tickle your funny bone. Sometimes I like to talk about really pressing and upsetting issues.
Yeah.
And I get all of my angst out off the show. But some of you might think, John's such a jovial guy. I wish I could read about his dark side and some of the disturbing work that he's done as a lawyer. Well, now you can. Yeah,
I am going to check my inbox now because I subscribed in advance. I signed up for the pre-sale of the email.
The article pre-sale.
The article pre-sale. I was promised tickets and stickers for signing up for the pre-sale as well. So they are in the post. Thanks so much, everybody. And we can't wait to see you next week.
The podcast.